Hey everyone, I'm Jelsy. Thank you so much for joining me, and today I want to talk about episode 9 from season 8 of One Calls a Heart. It's been such an amazing journey and so much substance and the storytelling. We have a lot to cover, so let's begin. Episode 9 is titled Pre-Wedding Jitters. It was written by John Tinker and directed by Siobhan Devine.
Not important enough.
Elizabeth, Jack's death wasn't Nathan's fault.
Right off the bat,
You know that.
Elizabeth asks Rosemary why does she think that Nathan took so long to tell her what had happened in Fort Clay. Rosemary gives her opinion and she says that probably he thought that it wasn't important enough to tell her this and upset her. But I think about Nathan and how difficult it must have been for him to struggle and fight with this. Do I tell her, do I not tell her? So it's a tough thing. Also, Rosemary reminds her that Jack's death wasn't Nathan's fault. And Elizabeth, you can see it in her face that she has so much information on her mind that it's just a lot to handle at the moment. So she just has to leave. My heart breaks for Elizabeth because she's navigating this, and of course she has never experienced this before and there's no guidebook for her, so she's doing her best and trying to figure things out.
No.
Florence and Ned Yost are getting married, which I am super pumped about. So Rosemary and Molly are trying to help Florence find a dress, but Florence is kind of not liking anything that the girls are showing her. Rosemary is like, I don't even know what to do.
I promised I'd be back in time for your wedding.
And even a day early.
Great news, Fiona is back in town, which is so fun. I missed her.
Yeah, well, the Mountie knows. I just don't want you ending up like me.
So let's talk about Gowan and Christopher for a second. In previous episodes, we had seen that Christopher had arrived in Hope Valley in a random car, and then at some point, he just leaves it in the woods. So we assume that it's a stolen car. The Mounties found it, they're trying to figure out who stole it, and it turns out that the lab results came back inconclusive, and Bill is just not having it. He says that he wants to know who stole it. Christopher tells Gowan that a friend of his actually stole the car. He used that same car to get to Hope Valley. In his mind, Gowan is like he doesn't want his son to end up like him. So we can assume that he's gonna try to do everything that he can to protect his son. And we actually see this by the end of the episode because Bill actually found footprints in the car, and Gowan knows that those footprints are Christopher's. So Gowan takes what we can assume are Christopher's boots and just throws them in the fire. He burns the evidence. He just wants to protect his son, but he's kind of going against the law. He's interfering, and we'll see what happens. Now Christopher has, left that troublemaking life because of Rachel, and Gowan relates to that because he says that once there was a woman who also saw something special in him, aka Abigail. A huge side note, here we learned that Gowan was actually divorced. Who knew?
What do you say to your uncle and me working this out?
That sounds so good.
There's this scene where Allie visits Lucas at the saloon, and she's concerned with everything that has been happening with Nathan and Lucas and Elizabeth. And I really like that Lucas eased her mind in telling her that she didn't have to worry, that was something that him and Nathan were gonna figure out, and that she didn't have to carry that. And Allie left the saloon like, this guy isn't so bad.
Even ordinary Florence is extraordinary.
Thank you, Molly.
Molly, Florence, and Fiona are trying to figure out what hairstyle Florence is gonna wear on her wedding day. And she says that she wants anything but ordinary Florence. And I love the friendship that comes through this, because Molly speaks up immediately and says to Florence that even ordinary Florence is extraordinary. Team Flomo friendship. Love it.
And they all agree that I should
accept. You'll pastor the church?
I had talked about this, and you guys know that I really wanted Joseph to be the next pastor of Hope Valley. Before Lee can even ask him, Joseph accepts. He's like, yes, I'll do it. He even gets a bell for the church.
I accepted the surgical fellowship.
Faith was really encouraging in have him accepted, but now that he has said yes, she's surprised. She doesn't know now what's this going to look like, what their next step is. He is supposed to be there for 2 years. So Faith doesn't know if she's gonna go to Baltimore with him for the surgical fellowship or stay in Hope Valley and be separated for all that time. But then they're actually considering marriage later on in the future. So we'll see how things look for Carson and Faith.
I'm sorry, Rosemary. I can't let Elizabeth go that easily.
Rosemary knows, of course, the things that have been going on between Elizabeth and Nathan and Lucas. So she tells Nathan that she's been in his shoes. Like, she goes back to what we know happened in season 1, that she was actually engaged to Jack, that she was in love with him when she first arrived in Hope Valley, and she acknowledges that she may have caused some unhappiness for Jack and Elizabeth. And Nathan gets the message, but he's very clear that he's not backing out. He's not going down without a fight. Whoa. And also, to add to this, when Rosemary was at the library, she got some books, and it turns out the books are about land acquisition, surveying. Is Rosemary going to be like a realtor at some point? You know, because Rosemary is trying to find out and figure out what's the next step for her.
Mom likes working with Mr. Yost, so that must make it fun.
Well, someone to talk with.
Oh my goodness. We had heard that Florence had a son, and in this episode we finally meet him. Paul, and he's so sweet, and apparently Allie thinks so as well.
I felt that it was my responsibility to look after you.
Elizabeth
protect
goes
you.
to Nathan to confront him about why he didn't tell her about Fort Clay earlier. Get this, guys. We learn that Nathan actually was the one who requested a transfer to Hope Valley. I mean, what? He didn't know Jack personally. He knew that he had left a wife and a baby in Hope Valley, and he felt that it was his duty and his responsibility to look after them and protect them. But then when he fell in love with her, he felt guilty, like he was betraying Jack. And I saw somebody post on social media that Nathan had this on his mind. When you guys remember in the episode where there was the windstorm, that he just totally freaks out over Elizabeth going to find Emily alone. He says that he's falling in love with her like twice in this conversation, and he says that love is worth fighting for. And that last line, you can see in her face that she didn't expect that, and that's actually something that she said before.
Lucas?
I love the Bachelor Bachelorette party. I always love those scenes so much. It's because everybody is together. I loved them playing charades. It was so fun. And then they play a game where the woman is blindfolded and she has to touch the men's hands that are there, and she has to try to figure out which hands belong to the one that she's meant to be with. Florence goes first, and then they call Elizabeth to do it. She tries to not do it, but she's kind of like forced to, and she looks at Rosemary with a help face. And Rosemary just doesn't do anything. So Elizabeth, begins. She first touches Carson's hands, and then she touches Nathan's hands. And Lucas is right next to Nathan. And I'm watching this, and I'm already like this, you guys. She starts smiling because she thinks those are Lucas's hands. So she even says Lucas's name. She takes the blindfold off, and it's Nathan. How awkward is this?
I don't even know what to say to you. You are my son, and you took advantage of me, Henry. I cannot justify.
Also, in this episode, Lucas tells Gowan that he was the one who actually contacted Christopher in the first place and had him come to Hope Valley, basically just to keep an eye on Gowan. And Gowan is not very happy about that.
So what did you say to Nathan when he told you that he loves you?
After the awkwardness of what happened in the bachelorette party, Lucas visits Elizabeth to make sure she's okay, and he seems fine and not worried. She says to Lucas that she talked to Nathan, and she actually tells Lucas that Nathan said that he loved her again. Lucas asks her like what her response was, and she tells the truth. She says that she didn't say anything and that she just left. And you can see in Lucas's face that that was not the answer he was hoping to hear.
That sounds noble and selfless.
I never asked him to be noble.
Then the episode concludes in the way that it began, with Elizabeth and Rosemary. Elizabeth explains, you know, the conversation that she had with Nathan and the reason why he arrived in Hope Valley, and Rosemary thinks it's noble. Elizabeth thinks that Rosemary actually encouraged Nathan to continue on with his feelings towards her, and Rosemary is like, look, like, I want what's best for you, and Elizabeth just snaps. She's like, how would you know what's best for me? And we never seen Elizabeth react like this, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, she is going through grief still, and this news from Nathan actually triggers that, and she's just trying to navigate it as best as she can with what she has in that moment. Rosemary just decides to, okay, I should leave. It broke my heart to see this friendship go through this tough time, but I know that the love between these characters is real, so they'll totally work this out. But to see this interaction, it just made these characters even more relatable and more human. So this was kind of like a recap of episode 9. Next Sunday is Ned and Florence's wedding, which I am super excited about. I'm looking forward to it. And just seeing how this season concludes. It has been a ride. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if there was a specific moment that stuck with you, that impacted you in some way. Let me know. See you on my next video. God bless. Bye.